Going to go ahead and port this oil pressure relief hole here on the regulator, because I know with this non-turbo block, no oil squirters, it's going to have high oil pressure, so we'll just give this a quick port job. And there it is, just a little bit larger using this carbide burr. You can see the hole's a little bit oblong now and a little bit radiused. So I'm just going to clean that up, make sure that plunger slides in and out of there without catching anything, and we'll be good. And there's our hole, drilled and tapped, almost centered. I like to coat these paper gaskets with some copper spray before I install them. I also like to trim away this little corner right here, because if you look at the oil filter housing, which has ended up going right there, that oil pressure relief that I ported lines right up there, and the oil pours into there, right into the pan. And I have had this paper gasket bunch up and block that before and cause high oil pressure, so I always trim that off of there. Alright, I got this front cover / oil pump and oil filter housing on here. I also have the tensioner, hydraulic tensioner on there, because these two bolts here hold that front cover on. And I wanted all these bolts to be installed and tight, including this one, while that gasket sets. You torque all these M8s to 16 foot-pounds, and then this 14 millimeter right here, that goes to 25. And I imagine I have to take this back off to install the Kigley trigger and the sensor, but I just wanted to have all these bolts in for now. I have this 6-bolt oil pickup. I need to cut this bracket off of here. Anybody who's used ARP main studs before knows that there's no provisioning for this anymore, so this just gets cut off. But I also had this pickup block-off plate installed, which will help with any starvation of the pickup and therefore the oil pump under hard acceleration. Kind of a crude job at cutting that bracket off. I did file down the sharp edges so no one's going to get cut on this thing. But I'm really not that interested in getting too close to the pickup tube itself and creating any leaks that would cause major issues. Sucking air up into the oil pump, cavitation, all the stuff I'm trying to avoid with this plate. So I just left it like that. Don't tell anyone. I've never actually done this before, but I've always wanted to. I got some putty here. I'm going to set it down on there. Then I'm going to stick the oil pan on there, and I'm going to measure how much clearance I have. Well, it's stuck to the pan, so I just peeled it off and put it back on the pickup so you can see what kind of clearance we have there. That's pretty close, but I couldn't get it to sit good. That was way too much putty. I'm going to try a little less. We'll try this. Okay, now we're talking. I was able to get the pan down the way I wanted it, and if I carefully use this dial indicator, I can get the clearance. Looks like 2.5 millimeters. Not quite a full tenth. Looks good. If you add the distance of the plate to the actual pickup to the clearance you have between the plate and the pan, so just about 2/10 there and another 1/10 between the plate and the pan, you get a recommended clearance that's pretty standard of about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. I gotta be honest, I dread doing oil pans. I feel like every time I do them they leak. I'm laying down my bead around the inside of the bolts. I'm going to add a couple more dabs to the outside. And then I'm going to set the pan on there. Alright, sticking all these bolts in right now. Just finger tight a few threads. I'm going to let this thing sit on here for like 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to snug these up. Got my two short bolts right there where they belong. Higley 12-tooth crank trigger. Instructions, hardware. There's a little billet sensor bracket, and over here is this. So I just have this snugged in here temporarily. I still need to get the sensor that goes in it. So just so it holds the front cover on the way it should be. Until I get a sensor in, that'll sit there like that. There's also the wire that has to be run for this according to the instructions from Higley Racing. And what I need to do is drill a couple holes here so that I can mount these push zip ties here. There we are. And secure that wire. So I'll get on that. Alright, I drilled both my 3/16 holes for those push-in zip ties. I don't have a timing cover back here, so I'm using this location instead. And I'm using the suggested location near the tensioner right here for the other one. Since I'll be running an electric water pump, I got this water pump lock-off plate from J Racing with a -12 AN bung welded on there to get to my electric water pump. I'm going to bolt it on there with the socket head screws, some nylon washers, some thread lock, and we should be good. Powder coating on that engine bracket came out nice too. Make note, this thing is important. I had a car that did not have one of these once, and the crank pulley sheared off the 4 bolts and came off the car while I was driving it. That story ended okay. Yours might not. Here's the sensor for the Higley V3 crank trigger. There's the part number. Higley Racing includes a bolt and a few shims so that you can get this target sensor air gap. Once we get the sensor out of the package, it becomes pretty obvious which way it gets installed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm looking for 25 to 35 thousandths air gap here, but I got this 10 thousandths and I can't even get it started in there, so I'm just going to add some shims and go from there. 10 millimeter on a swivel on an extension on a 1/4 inch drive. Alright, now what do we got here? The 20 fits. And I got a 30 here. It was the next one I was going to check. And it doesn't fit. So that's with 3 washers. I'm going to have to add the 4th. Alright, so with all the included washers, I can get this 30 back there, but I can't get this 32 back there. So 25 to 35, we're right at 30-31. Calling it. I'm getting this cable routed. I got it plugged in there. And routed the way the picture shows that comes with the trigger kit. And I've also drilled a hole here and drilled a hole here so I can anchor some tie wraps in there and secure this in place. And there it is. Your 12-tooth wheel, your billet bracket, your sensor, your cable, tie wrapped here, routed here. I tie wrapped it on the back here since I don't have any timing covers or a tin right here. And this is ready to go. Just a note, I changed how I was going to do my oil pressure ascending unit on this oil filter housing. I went away from the drill and tap method and I brought it to Forced Induction Pros, where they machined a piece and welded it on the housing so that the sensor would point straight up instead of straight out. In the event that vibration kills the sensor, I'll go ahead and install a braided steel line that will run to a remote sensor location. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Put cheese on it.